Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Model United Nations. Today we will discuss the barriers to education that children living in poverty face. We have 4 delegates for our discussion today. Let me introduce themselves. Start from Amel from Indonesia,
Present and vote.
Fred Smith from Finland,
Present and forward.
Jong Sura from South Korea,
Present and vote.
Elsa from Singapore.
Present and vote.
I'm Stephen James from USA as moderator, and this is my partner Ning Ning from Republic of China as secretary. Now let us hear the rules.
First, the participants don't use any gadget. Second, the participants don't talk before loud. Third, the participants don't leave the discussion until the end.
Now I allow you to read the provided cases on your laptop. I will give you 5 minutes to read the article. I want to ask Mr. Smith with case lack of funding for education. Please give your opening statement for this topic.
Alright, thank you for the opportunity. Developing countries are facing a mounting demand for more and better education. Adequate financing is required to produce greater quality and equality within the educational system, and constant freezers are applied to provide educational resources for the sectors. Funding is always an issue. If there is not enough of it, the labs are not stocked with the necessary equipment, networks are not robust, and teachers are not paid enough, buildings are not maintained well, and so on. Too much funding doesn't really do much after you paid for the academic staff. Thank you.
Next, Elsa from Singapore with case the exclusion of children with disabilities. Please give your opening statement about this topic.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Regarding this issue, children with disabilities are particularly vulnerable to stigma and discrimination and are often segregated. They may not appear in national statistics or becoming invisible. They face multiple rights violations, from a lack of early detection or diagnosis of their disabilities to exclusion from education and participation in their communities. Millions of children with disabilities are thought to be out of school. Some teachers still refuse to educate children with disabilities, and some parents fear that their children's education will suffer if they share the classroom with a child who has a disability. Thank you.
Alright, next Amel from Indonesia with case being the wrong gender. Please give your opening statement.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My statement regarding to this case, seeing that the education, even in nowadays, the gender is still become a major issues. Because many people think that women has a shorter perspective than a man. And poverty also forces many families to choose which of their children to send to school. Girls often miss out about this due to belief that there's less value in educating a girl than a boy. Thank you.
One is Miss Jongsura with case living in country in conflict or at risk of conflict. Please give your opening statement about this topic.
Alright, thank you for the opportunity. As we all know today, children are at more risk in war and conflict zone than at any time in the last 20 years. Children are the first victims during war. In countries like Yemen, Syria, Nigeria, South Sudan, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Iraq, children are trapped by the horrors of war. According to UNICEF, nearly 250 million children are living in countries affected by conflicts. More than 75 million children and young people aged 3 to 18 are currently in urgent need of educational support in 35 crisis-affected countries, with young girls 90% more likely to be out of secondary school in conflict areas than elsewhere. So, now, children need to be protected and given a chance to be children again. Thank you.
Alright, from now, I allow you in 2 hours to each country to find the solution of the different cases provided in your device and laptop. Okay, time is over. I allow each country to give the solution of case.
Singapore. So I got the exclusion for children with disabilities case. As we know that schools have a powerful role to play in creating inclusive societies, schools where all children belong, where all children have a place, and where difference is a natural part of what it's to be a human being. Based on this understanding, many countries around the world are moving towards more inclusive education systems. The solutions regarding this issue are the first is support outreach services to families with young children to identify and respond to any disabilities at an early age. The second is giving children a chance to reach their potential and keeping families together. That next, home visiting programs, an approach that spans child protection, health and nutrition, and early childhood development, and give family support and connect them to specialized services. To fulfill the right to education is by ensuring that quality education available for all children, promoting inclusive education, and introducing positive measures to enable children to benefit from it, such as by making physical adaptations to buildings, providing accessible transport, adapting the curricula to the needs of all children, and providing necessary equipment and resources. That's all for me. Thank you.
South Korea. So my issue is living in a country in conflict or at risk of conflict. As I have mentioned in opening statement, in total, 75 children have had their education disrupted by conflict or crisis, including natural disasters that destroy schools and the environment around them. So regarding this issue, with our help together, we can give those children who are already the victims of war to support to build brighter futures, and we can stop future child victims of conflict by acting together to push government to strengthen protection for children caught up in war. So, here I'm calling for governments and other groups with the power to protect children to commit to these actions. First, preventing children being put at risk. For instance, the investments need to be made in peacekeeping, conflict prevention initiatives, and training for military forces on child protection. Second, uphold international laws and standards. All countries and non-state groups should abide by their commitments under international laws and should endorse the Safe School Declarations, and states and armed groups must commit to avoiding the use of explosive weapons in populated areas. Third, holding violators to account. We here urgently need stronger monitoring and reporting mechanism to properly track civilian harm and child casualties, and stronger justice systems that address violations of children's rights in conflict. And the last one is rebuilding shattered lives. Funding for the rebuilding of children's lives wrecked by conflict must be made available. We must invest in programs for children affected by conflict, including providing the right mental health support for children and training local mental health workers. So, From this solution, I hope the governments really push all of us to always support the children. And for us as a human, we can donate today to help children in war by providing life-saving assistance and protection to those in need around the world. That's all from me, thank you.
Indonesia. Okay, so here my case or my issue is being the wrong gender, especially for a women. Gender is one of the biggest reasons why children are denied an education. Despite a recent advance in girls' education, a generation of young women has been left behind. Over 130 million young women around the world are not currently enrolled in school. 1 in 3 girls in the developing world marries before the age of 18 and usually leaves the school if they do. So after marrying, they usually leave the school. Keeping girls in school benefits them and their family, but the poverty forces many families to choose which of their children to send to school. Girls often miss out due to the belief that there's less value in educating a girl than a boy. Instead, they are sent to work, forced into marriage, or made to stay at home to look after their siblings and work on household chores. Girls also miss day of school every year or are too embarrassed to participate in class because they don't have appropriate menstrual hygiene, education, or toilet facilities at their school to manage their period. Okay, so from the issue that I got, being the wrong gender, as we can see nowadays, even nowadays in the education, women are still left behind, especially in the poverty countries. Because in the poverty countries, the parents have to choose which one their children goes to school without thinking that the benefits from women education is really important for the next generation or the next family. As in my religion, in Islam, that the mother is the first school for their children. So this stereotype that mother has more time to educate their children. And from this, we should change the stereotype that the women is not important to educate, because the good generation is coming from a good and educated woman. That's my opinion. And besides the factors that poor country can send the women to school is the lack of their education about the feminism, like menstruation. If the women get the menstruation, they didn't know what should they do, and then they feel embarrassed to go to school. So besides we change the stereotype of the parents and the humans, we also have to educate the women more about the feminism. Thank you so much.
Finland, please. I get a cases about a lack of funding for education. Developing countries cannot rely solely on their own financing for education. There is also a need for more foreign aid. Only 20% of aid for education goes to low-income countries, according to the Global Partnership for Education, or GPA, but it costs an average of $1.25 a day per child in developing countries to provide 30 years of education. If each developing country invested just 50% cent more per child, it could make all the difference. There is currently a $39 billion gap to providing quality education to all children by 2030. GPA encouraged developing countries to contribute to 20% of their national budget of education and allocate 45% of it to primary education. From 1916 to 1977, the percentage of gross national product or GNP allocated to education rose by 60%, and the rate of increase in developing countries was higher than in developed countries. Some countries devote, however, a large fraction of GNP than developing countries to education. In the same period, public expenditure or education increased as a percentage of the national budget. These increments and the freezers for further growth may explain the prevalent view that the basic problem lies in the level of financing. So the solution that I get from this case is greater efficiency in reaching state goals reduce the demand for more funds. Certain groups contend that the goals should be changed given the discrimination associated with existing allocation against rural or disadvantaged population, elementary education, women, or minorities. For them, efficiency means new goals, that is, using available resources to achieve better aims. Some groups are interested in the redistributed impact of public expenditure. Others are engaged in comparing the efficiency of the public education system with that of private initiatives. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for delegates with statement and the solution. Alright. Based on the explanation of each delegate, we know that a lack of funding for education is a problem that can solve by contribute the budget. Each countries have contributed 20% of their national budget to education and allocate 45% of it to primary education, affirms the right of people with disabilities to inclusive education at all levels without discrimination and the basis of equality of opportunity. Changing the stereotype of the people in their way of thinking about the education of the woman. Donate today and push government to strengthen protection for children caught off in war. For more details will be read by my partner.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. James. Finally, we reached the last session, and I will read the cases and also the solution about it. For the first case from Finland's delegate is lack of funding for education, and the solution are first, makes greater efficiency and do several things, the explosive demand for education. And the second is growth of the government activity in education. And the last is growing concern for performance, financing for efficiency, financing for equity, and the last is for diversity. The next case is Singapore's delegates, and the case is exclusion for children with disabilities, and the solutions are first, support outreach services to families with young children to identify and respond to any disabilities. And the second is giving children a chance to reach their potential and keeping families together. Next is home visiting programs. And the fourth is an approach that spans child protection, health and nutrition, and early childhood development. And the last is give family support and connect them to specialized services. And the third case is being the wrong gender from Indonesia's delegates. And the solutions are change the stereotypes of the parents or the people and educate the woman about feminism in a positive ways. Next is living in the country in conflict or at risk of conflict from South Korea's delegates, and the solutions are preventing children being put at risk, and the second is uphold international laws and standards. Next is holding violators to account, and the last is rebuilding shattered lives. Thank you, and back to Mr. James.
Thank you for each delegate for amazing statement and solution. This is a best experience for us discussion together. See you in the next Model United Nation with a great team. Thank you so much. Save your day and have a nice day.